Go ahead.
Yeah,
We'll
Mr.
get back
Harper,
to you.
I don't know how far you've changed in your views of the unemployed since the speech you gave in '97, where you said to Americans, don't feel badly about the Canadian unemployed. They're doing just fine because of our system of insurance and generous social welfare. Those programs, unemployment insurance, have gone down. Workers who are unemployed are running out of their unemployment insurance. And the jobs that are being created are lower productivity, service economy jobs. The jobs that are being lost are the higher productivity, manufacturing, pulp and paper sector jobs. And that's just not my opinion. That's the conclusion. Again, I hate to tell you, you really should read the OECD report on Canada's economy, because it gives you some good advice, which you seem to have ignored.
Jack, it's because it's leaving people having to do 2 or 3 jobs to stay where they were. Canadian families are working 290 hours more per month than they used to work. And you talk about our employment insurance being there for them and things like that. We've seen slashes from the previous government, and you've done nothing to deal with that, affecting especially women. It's as though there's this kind of cold-hearted attitude that we're going to let everybody sink or swim, and it's not the right time for that as we're in the middle of economic turbulence.
Monsieur Duceppe and then Mr. Harper.
Mr. Harper, I just don't see how you can say that you're helping the companies in the manufacturing sector by reducing their income tax. They're not making any profits, so they don't pay taxes. This is why we're asking for reimbursable tax credit, and I insist on a reimbursable, because then they will have some money for research and development. We have to target very specific issue and help them in a very specific way to face the huge challenges of the emerging economies in China and India.
Well,
this is what we have to do.
You've asked, we're already, as I said, already making investments, already giving incentives for investment, and already making major investments in research and development and science and technology in this country.
Tax credit,
we're already making
$7
billion worth of investments, $7 billion worth of investments in the development of environmental technology. I was asked earlier about EI. We've said in this election campaign, one of the things we're going to do with the EI system is open that system so that self-employed individuals, particularly women, can access maternity and parental leave benefits. That's something that I think you should be supporting.
Good approach to the center that always have been good for Canada, and it's the one we need to follow with very fiscal discipline to avoid deficit. We need to have investments in our infrastructure, investment in our manufacturing sector system. We need to cut the taxes on the productive activities, on our savings, on our income. We need to shift it to pollution. It's what the countries that are successful in the 21st century are doing. There are a lot of things to do. For that, you need to have a government that believes in the role of the government to help the people.
Jack Layton. Well, Mr. Dion, I've got to say, you want to support the $50 billion of corporate tax cuts that Mr. Harper wants to do, plus you also want to do all these investments and add a tax. It doesn't add up. And the problem with Mr. Harper's approach, which, by the way, you've supported for the last year, I don't know why you kept him in power so long if you disagree with him so much, but his approach is what we've seen in the U.S. Pin everything on a corporate tax cut and assume that all will be well. The real economy requires investment in infrastructure for our cities so investors come, investment in education and training so we have the workers, investment in green and advanced technologies for the next century. And you have no plan along those lines. It's all let things just keep on flowing. That's a recipe for trouble.
Mr. Layton's answer started by making some allegations about Monsieur Dion. I have to give him a chance to respond.
Because in fact, Mr. Layton, every expert who look at our plan said that the numbers add up, and we'll have in fact, $3 billion of buffer, a contingency reserve to avoid a deficit that Mr. Harper shamefully abandoned. And in fact, I guess you have a stronger admiration for Sweden, which has a very strong economy and very close to reach its Kyoto target. What they have done there, they have cut taxes on income of the people and income of the companies. The corporate tax is very low in Sweden, and they tax pollution instead. To cut the corporate tax is something the Liberal government did well before Mr. Harper. It's not a it's not a right-wing policy. It's not a left-wing policy. It's a sound policy to tax pollution instead.
Can I get in here for a second? Those countries is the cap and trade program.
The reality is that the economy is changing, and I do think the reality is that when a job is lost, it's unlikely to come back. What we have to do is make sure we get the jobs of the future. That's why we're doing things like strategic investments in technology in the automobile and aerospace sector. It's why we're investing, why we're encouraging manufacturers to invest in new equipment and machinery, because they have to be able to transform to identify the markets so they can compete in a global economy. It's why we have a science and technology strategy. You know, what we're going to have to do is face the fact that the economy will continue to change. No politician can guarantee an individual job. What we've got to be able to do is guarantee that as we lose some jobs, we gain more. And that's so far what we have been doing.
Mr. Duceptin is asking you, why don't you give reimbursable tax credit to the manufacturing sector? Those companies who are not making profits, if they want to have that money, it has to be reimbursable. And asking you for the third time, could you deny that you're not giving reimbursable tax credit?
The present policy is not a reimbursable credit. It is a tax credit. It is a tax. Well, you let him answer. Jill, you can claim it on future income. We're looking at the reimbursable option. It's very expensive.
About time.
What's important? What's important is that whatever balance
asked and answered. Let's go to.
You claim to care about families. Families need jobs in the communities where they live, and a policy that allows the Canadian dollar to rise so fast that distorts the economy through the growth of the Athabasca tar sands at all costs, that loses us jobs for every industry that relies on exports and for tourism. We need to have the kinds of policies that have a national vision and a national focus. So your government that promises billions of dollars for Coast Guard vessels should build them in Canada to create jobs here. It is false economics to try to save money by building those ships in South Korea rather than giving people jobs here at home.
We shouldn't be shipping raw logs off to other countries. I can't think of anything they make with wood that we couldn't make here, but you have absolutely no plan to make sure that happens. So our forests are disappearing and going elsewhere, and then we have to buy the product back. Similarly with our auto sector. 5 years ago, we proposed a strategy for producing green cars here in Canada. We didn't get any action from the previous government. We certainly got no action from your government. We could have been in the forefront of this area, but it's this hands-off attitude at the bank.
Mr. Layton, with respect, the question was, are these manufacturing jobs gone?
They are certainly not. If we invest and have a strategy to make sure that we're not squandering our natural resources or the talent of our
people are watching us and are asking, do they care about our jobs? I care because we have among the most skillful, talented people in the manufacturing sector in the world. And when I was a minister during a decade, I met many countries and counterparts were telling me, don't lose your manufacturing sector because you will weaken your economy. We did this mistake. Kenyans, you're fortunate. Do everything to save it. We have a prime minister over the last 2 years and 2.5 years. Each time we're asking him to do something, he said what he said today. Well, the economy will create jobs elsewhere. We have a plan for the manufacturing sector to invest in it and to attract investments around the world. When you have this laissez-faire approach with Mr. Flaherty, the governors of the United States are everywhere in the world, states of the world, invest in our state. And Mr. Flaherty said, we are not losers.
In fairness,
I'm sorry.
I have to let him respond first, then we'll come to you. Mr. Harper.
Let's be clear once again. In the United States right now, they are bailing out the banking system because of misregulation. We're not doing that in Canada. What we're doing in Canada is we're investing. We have the largest national infrastructure investments in this country's history, including just extending the gas tax transfer. We are investing in individual sectors. We've special investments for the forestry sector, for the automobile sector, for the aerospace sector, special incentives for manufacturing. This is hardly a laissez-faire attitude. This is a government that is making the very specific, we're already doing the very specific things you're saying we should be doing. That's why this policy is working. Look, I would say that overall we're being successful. We're keeping the economy on course. We're not going into a recession. We have a slowdown. We are concerned about the ongoing job losses of manufacturing, and we're obviously looking at some additional ways of trying to assist that sector, and that's why we've announced some specific strategic funds. I think there's some areas we can do better, but we are not in the kind of economic crisis we have in the U.S.
The only party proposing a Buy Canada Act is the Bloc Québécois. To have one line, the Buy America Act. And it is within the rules of the WTO, the World Trade Organization. It would let Canada the possibility to help the clothing and textile industries for all the uniforms of the RCMP or the armed forces. I mean, that'd be easy to do. That'd help a lot of people in Montreal. I just don't see why you don't do it.
I've got to ask you this question from what you just said. We just had the Volvo plant, which builds aerospace equipment, close in Goderich. 500 jobs gone. And those jobs are going elsewhere, partly because of bad trade deals that were signed by previous governments and supported by your party, and partly because the so-called strategies you suggest are in place aren't there. We've proposed a jobs commissioner who would be on the job the moment we heard about the possible plant closing to get to work with a strategy to try to keep it open, make the sorts of steps and initiatives and partnerships that might make things work.